I don't think this is the beginning of a double-dip recession. I don't think we're heading back into a bear market the way we had in 2007, 2008. That said, I do expect more volatility in a rockier summer. The good news, particularly for U.S. investors, is the following: that the recovery in the U.S. is keeping on pace, and that while the events in Europe are serious, they probably don't derail the broader global recovery.
Okay, but we have some concerns on the markets today here in the Asia Pac. A sell-off is taking place. In fact, we have Asian stocks falling to a 9-month low. Now let's quickly focus in on Chinese shares, because the Shanghai Composite is losing ground today, down 1%, despite that rally we saw yesterday, which was the biggest in 6 months. Meantime, the Chinese shares traded here in Hong Kong, the so-called H shares, by the way, have entered bear market territory. Let's bring in Philip Yin for more on the markets now. Phil.
Yeah, bear market is right, Susan. Let's first get to the regional markets, and I'll tell you exactly what's happening in terms of what's moving the markets right now. The Nikkei 225 down 2.3%, down 231 points. Taiwan's down 2.3. The Kospi, which we are watching very closely, down 2.8% at 1560. In fact, most regional markets giving back some of the gains from yesterday. Part of the issue is the Korean won is down nearly 3.5% on concerns of what's happening just up north in North Korea. Investors focusing very closely on that, and that's dragging the rest of the Asian markets down. Of course, what happened overnight in the U.S. didn't help as well. Investors are focused on three things: the disappointing reaction on the U.S. side, in other words, no follow-through on a mini rally that we were trying to attempt to have over on the U.S. side, the concerns of North Korea being number two, and number three, the situation in Europe is still not resolved, and investors either are remaining on the sidelines or becoming very, very jitterish. You mentioned Shanghai. Shanghai is down nearly 1%. And in terms of Hong Kong markets, we're getting closer to that 19,000 mark, with the Hang Seng down nearly 1.9%, down 380 points. 287 for Hang Seng. Some traders looking at support now at the 19,000 level. And as you mentioned, the HSCEI, which is the Chinese shares listed here in Hong Kong, that's down as well to a bear market territory. As you can see, we're down here at 2.3%, and that's off of a big rebound that we had yesterday. So the situation remains tenuous at best. Of course, this is still early on in the trading day. Susan?
Okay, thanks for that, Phil. Fill you in with a look at the markets. Let's move on and go back to China. And another agenda item that may gather steam at the Strategic and Economic Dialogue is China's relations with Tibet, also maybe environmental causes as well, and how to cut down on carbon emissions. And for an insider view, let's bring in Laurence Brahm, who's the founder of the Red Capital Boutique Hotels. He's also an author and an activist, and he was an economic advisor to the former Chinese Premier Zhu Rongji, and visits us all the way here in Hong Kong, because you have the highest office in the world, all close to it, right?
3,600 meters above sea level.
Yeah,
that's right.
I don't know how you get enough oxygen in your lungs, Laurence. But let's talk about the SED. What's going on there? I mean, what are the important issues you're watching out for from these talks?
To be very frank, this is grand staging. This is really reflecting the political complexities between Hillary Clinton in State Department and Geithner in Treasury. And the Chinese are accommodating it. This is not going to bring any advancement of issues between both countries. If anything, it's probably detrimental. The former program of Hank Paulson was actually very constructive, because he himself had 70 trips behind him to China, Goldman Sachs CEO. He was focused on capital markets, and his target was very, very clear. But if you bring State and Treasury with counterparts Wang Qishan, who's in charge of the economy, and Dai Bingguo for foreign affairs, there's no way you can actually get anything done. And having been a former negotiator on many China deals, everything is done backroom, everything is done by building consensus behind the scenes. This kind of massive delegations is just grand staging, but the Chinese are accommodating it. I think they want to give a little bit of something for the media to take back to Washington, but it's not doing anything for relations.
Yeah, we love it. But let me just ask you something, Laurence. Are you questioning the resume of Tim Geithner, then, the U.S. Treasury Secretary?
I would certainly call some of the stuff coming out of Washington and China relations the honorable schoolboys. I think they need pragmatism. They need to be working behind the scenes. They need to get off of fossilized issues, which are way behind the times, and they need to be working with China in a positive way, and India has to be brought in it. We have to get away from these bilaterals and start to think multilateral, trilateral.
But why India in particular?
It's the next emerging economy. It's the third largest CO2 producer.
Right.
And we can sit around and talk about exchange rates, but if we don't do something about the environment very quickly, we don't want another grand staging like took place in Copenhagen. That wasted everybody's time. It was not constructive. What we need to have is we need to have 3 countries, the 3 largest CO2 producers in the world, sitting down and stop arguing about historic responsibility and present responsibility and fossilized issues which cannot progress. We need to sit down and come up with solutions, alternative renewable energy. All 3 countries are pushing huge stimulus packages. We need those stimulus packages to be spent on new grids for solar energy and do something to reduce the CO2 emissions and not just talk about it, which releases more gas.
Okay, well, you're not one to be shy, Peru. I mean, what do you think of that statement? I think they have a lot of issues right now, a lot of concerns. You know, we have a lot of markets being very, very volatile because you see another sell-off. And then you have the debt crisis. What do you think? Is this grandstanding to you? Do you even care about the SNED?
Well, I think Laurence has a great point, because what's happening now is just jawboning and rhetoric from both sides, and none of the serious issues are ever tackled. The Chinese yuan appreciation is going to take time, Susan. You know that as well as I do. It's not going to be overnight. It's going to be a gradual process, but the Chinese government keeps defending the yuan, and the Americans keep pinpointing towards the Chinese as currency manipulators. Anything is never achieved. Nothing is ever done. I mean, the environment is falling apart in China. In the US, you have a huge global warming problem. You have a huge fossil fuel problem, peak oil. Nothing is ever discussed properly, and people just talk about meaningless nonsense, which doesn't make any difference on a
You guys forget,
this
is politics, guys. You know, I mean, there's a lot of bureaucracy involved here. I mean, is that surprising to you? That's what it is, isn't it? That you're saying this grandstanding. It's not surprising.
The responsibility of elected leaders is to respond to issues of the people, and right now the global CO2 warming issue is the most intense problem that we're going to be facing. And in the run-up to Cancun, the strategic dialogue should be used as a stepping stone to begin a positive dialogue, constructive discussion. America has the technology. It has thin film solar technology. China has the power economically to have a new grid and to begin to reduce CO2 emissions. We need the 3 countries working together.
So the environment is a focus for you. What about for you from the SNED? What are investors looking at here?
Well, environment is obviously a main concern, because you can have all the wealth in the world. If you can't breathe the air, there's a serious problem. And we have huge problems in China, in India. Not only the environment, the water table is going down like there is no tomorrow. So these things need addressing now.
All right, guys. Thanks for dropping by. That does it for Asia Confidential. See you tomorrow.
Asia Confidential was brought to you by BNP Paribas, the bank for a changing world. Man Investments, a world-leading alternative investments provider, brings you the biggest movers report.